Monday, November 12th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, I teach you about surround sound because you don't know shit about it. Let's do this.
Well, we finally did it. This has been a long time coming. Scott and I have been debating this for many years, even back before it was an option.
We probably should have done it earlier.
I wish I'd done it earlier, but I guess the stars were in line. We kind of randomly decided, all right, let's actually go there and do it. But we weren't sure if we were going to do it. We went there, and we were just thinking, all right, we'll look. We'll touch. I don't know if we'll actually go all the way.
I had looked and touched previously. I did not need to look and touch again. I had already been there. It was not a new experience.
I'd touched one of these before, but the other one I'd never actually experienced it. And once I actually felt it against my back, it was fantastic.
Well, there was one that I experienced for a short time, but there was another one that I experienced for a very long stint, perhaps over a year.
I think it's a good idea that you got that extender at the top.
Yeah, the extension at the top definitely helped out.
All right, I can't do that with a straight face
Contagious
anymore.
laughter. I wouldn't laugh if it wasn't contagious.
We were going... I'll have you... Okay. So Scott and I finally went and bought real office chairs. I wouldn't even use the word chair. I think at this point, throne is appropriate.
I think throne is appropriate. I mean, until I can't get my business hammock from Scorpio, so this is, I guess, second best.
Yeah, we started laughing because Emily is our studio audience, and she lost it.
She definitely lost it.
But seriously, so I bought not the old Aeron chair, but the new Aeron chair, like the newest, fanciest Aeron chair.
I didn't even realize that the Aeron chair was updated. Like when I worked at that, middle of nowhere office that I quit, they had a bunch of Aeron chairs there, and there were like more Aeron chairs than people. There's one person and like 20 chairs, but I didn't realize at the time, like I sat in them, they weren't so great, I mean, they were great. Best chair I had sat in up till then, but not amazing great.
I mean, I'd sat in them before too, and I remember always thinking, it's real good, but it's not $1,000 good.
Right. Well, actually, those at the time, I think they were $800. But the point is that I didn't realize that chair that I had was the lowest end, oldest version Aeron chair, and nowadays they have
Posture Fit.
They have a much updated, much newer version, much higher end Aeron chair with more features.
Yeah, so we went to Sam Flax.
Sam Flax, if you don't know, is basically Staples, but fancy.
Let me put it to you this way. When you go to Staples, you find some like pimply 18-year-old, and you're like, hey, I want that office chair, that $80 office chair. Bring me a box. And then an hour later, they stumble out with it. Here, it was like we had basically a personal salesman. It was a lot like buying a car.
He was definitely making a big commission. I think that helped his enthusiasm.
But it was very interesting to be serviced with that level of just, would sir like to try this brand of chair?
I could do a whole Thursday episode about the degradation of customer service in the retail industry, but I'll just keep it at this. When I was a kid, like 3 years old, my mom would take me to the mall, right? The same mall that now is just a crap mall. And there was a shoe store there. I think it was Buster Brown. And I would go there, and this old man, who was the cool old shoe man, he would measure my foot, and he would pick a shoe that he thought would be good for my foot, and he would put it on my foot, and then I'd walk around, and he'd be like, and he would actually try to sell us the shoe, and he'd be real nice, and he'd put it in a box, and he'd take my old shoes and take care of them, and he'd put the laces in, and it was his level of service.
I had the same thing. I mean, you'd go to the Disney store in the mall, there'd be animatronics.
Yeah.
People would be dressed up at the mall, and all the stores would have very helpful people standing at the door, welcoming you, selling you things. If I went to the Gap or whatever place you buy clothes from nowadays, you punk kids, there'd be a salesperson who would recommend things.
Yep. And then one day I went to buy shoes, and there were just boxes of shoes sitting there. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Is someone going to come and measure my foot? And that was the end. And from then on, I just had to get used to the fact that, and I did eventually get used to the fact that I look at the shoe, it's on this display. I have to find a box in my size instead of saying, hey, do you have this in my size? Go in the back and find it for me. And I'd find it in my size, I had to try them on myself, figure it out myself. Most places don't even have the freaking measuring things out there, right? And it sucks. And then in New York City, I went to buy shoes, like 3 years ago because I had to, dress up for that job I quit when I did work in the city instead of the middle of nowhere.
Did you dress up just for the day you quit? Like you come in a suit and tie? Yeah, I quit.
Yeah, I had to. But I went and I went to Florsheim, I think, which is, a shoe store, a men's shoe store. Well, mostly a men's shoe store.
Well, he had to match the handbag.
Yeah, and the old man measured my foot, and he went in the back, and he got the size, and he did the whole thing, and he was talking it up, and I'm like, wow, this level of service still exists.
In New York City.
In the city, where things are priced higher, and people demand a higher level of service. And I'm saying, it's sort of worth it to pay more to get the service that I demand, that I became unused to, that I now realize that I miss and I want.
Plus, I sat down in one of the normal Aeron chairs. I'm like, all right, I don't know if I want to spend $900 on a chair. This is nice. I like the mesh because my butt won't sweat when I'm doing the show. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it wasn't like this revelation. It wasn't some sort of transcendent experience. And then it's pointed out to me that the Aeron chair next to that one is the new model, the newest model, the fanciest one that exists. And I sat in it, and it was like a completely different chair.
It was totally different. Like, I had sat in an Aeron chair for months and months and months, like every day. And I sat in that new one, and I was like, whoa, this one is totally different.
And the guy was showing me how to work it and the different angles and the way it floats and the way it works. And
there was one thing that really turned me away from that chair, though, was how complicated it was. You keep manipulating all the levers.
That's fine, though, because it has two basic states that are easy to switch between. The sitting and typing and the front 5 degrees elevated that apparently, it's great for podcasting. What can I say?
Yeah, well, your Herman Miller Aeron chair might have 2 states, but my human scale freedom chair has infinity states.
Now, Scott, way back, had always talked about this freedom chair. And, they had him there. And the thing is, there's the normal freedom chair, and then there's the one with the headrest. And the headrest adds like $100 to $200 to the price.
It adds like $150, but you can't add the headrest later. So you have to decide when you buy it if it's headrest or no headrest.
So I'd always thought,
other things like the gel seat and the gel armrest you can change later, but not the headrest.
But I was like, $150 for a headrest? Well, what the balls? But I sat down in it before Scott did. And let me tell you, that headrest, I don't know how we did it, but I'd lean back and it would move differently from the rest of the chair, and I was always comfortable no matter what position I was in. It was
the reason I like the freedom chair the most over the Aeron chair is that basically I like to sit, in weird ways. My posture sucks, but I like it. I'm very comfortable when something is pressing against my back. Right?
It's called lumbar support.
Right. Well, no, I mean like my entire back, all the
because the lumbar is key for me.
Right. So yeah, it is key. All the chairs have that if they're worth a shit. But what I would do at previous jobs is I would put the armrest of the chair up on the desk, right, to sort of keep the chair in a reclined position so that gravity was always pulling me into the back of the seat to put pressure on my back. The Freedom chair has very few levers. It has an up-down lever, and you can move the pad of, the seat pad forward and back, right? I'll probably put it all the way back. Other than that, you can also move the armrests around. But other than those 3 things, there are no other levers on the chair.
But it just moves. Parts move.
You just move the way you want to move to get in the position you want to be in, and the whole chair moves with you and is applying constant pressure to my entire back. And there's a non-headrest version, which I sat in and was amazing. And if I really needed to save that $150, I would have gotten it. But the headrest one is just more, $150 more. And I wasn't originally going to go for it, but I did. And it is awesome. And I'm waiting for it to show up.
It'll arrive probably the day after tomorrow or
It'll arrive this week, definitely. There's no doubt about that. For the amount of money we're paying, they're going to give us the high-class service.
The fact that we just dropped more money on office chairs than we've spent on the entirety of Geek Nights to date.
Well, you think about it. I sit in that chair a lot, and the chair I have now I had since 1998,
the worst thing, the guy pointed out, it's only $40 to ship one within Manhattan, and I realized
could have had it sent to your office. I thought about that too.
Now I'm thinking this is bad, but I feel like I should have 2.
Yeah.
Because between sitting in the chair I'm sitting in now, which is a nice chair, I spent like $400 for this, I don't know, 8 years ago. And it's a nice chair, but it's starting to fall apart. It's old. And I sit in this chair most of my time, and I sit in my chair at work the rest of my time. There are very few chairs I sit in more than those two chairs combined. I feel like I should spend the money to have the absolute best thing to put my ass on that I can get.
Yeah, I do sit in the office chair a bit more, but I figure I'm not going to work at the job forever, even though I have no problems with it now. And there's a good chance that, one day, the building, we're running out of room, so we might move, and then there might be a chance for the company to buy me a good chair, a better chair. I mean, the chair I work I have is not so bad now. Plus, if I buy one for work and then I stop working there, I might work somewhere else that gives me a chair, and I'll have a redundant chair. That's
I gotta say, the primary reason I didn't just buy another one was very simply that I just started my new job, and I wondered how it would look if, in my second week of work, I just roll an Aeron chair in one day and stick it in my little space.
Yeah, it might not be too good.
I imagine it would have been hilarious.
No, but yeah. People say these chairs, he's right. The price does keep going up, and I tried to get a deal on eBay because I didn't want to pay the ludicrous price, but it's just impossible to try to get a deal.
It's also
on these
not
things.
worth it. The chairs are great, and they're worth the money. I'm serious.
Yeah, plus it's gonna last me, probably. I mean, this chair lasted me how many years? 6, 7, 8. I assume that this chair will last me like 20 to 25 years, hopefully, if not more. Plus, I can replace the seats and the cushions if they get screwed up.
Yep. And
Unlike
once again,
my current chair where the cushions are screwed up and that's the end of it.
just really goes in with our whole philosophy of, instead of buying a bunch of crap like a lot of people do, I'm willing to spend money for quality. So I guess if I'm gonna get something,
A chair
I might
sit
as
in a
well
lot,
get.
and yeah.
I'll spend a lot of money on a few very good things than a lot of money on a bunch of crap. I don't need 1,000 DVDs, but I'd really like to have one really good DVD.
Yep. And a chair that I sit in at my computer is something I use a lot and is very important and will make a big difference, Whereas something else that I might use very rarely, my toaster oven, I can afford to get a $20 toaster,
Actually, currently, we have the toaster oven. The actual toaster we own costs $4.98 at Target.
And for the amount we use it and the difference it makes in our lives, the $20 toaster, the $30 toaster wouldn't really improve our lives much.
It's an awful toaster. It's garbage.
But it does what we need.
Barely. It overheats. It can't do a bagel for crap.
Well, it's not a bagel toaster.
It's like the worst
it's
toaster.
a bread toaster. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Should buy $1,000 toaster.
Yeah, because we toast. If I toasted every day, I would, but I don't.
Right. So, news, I guess.
This is an old news from last week, but I want to talk about it anyway because I didn't talk about it last week. There are some guys, and I'm not even going to go into any details on this because I don't really care. The point is that they are coding basically what amounts to a stupidity filter for the internets.
Oh, you're going to talk about this.
Yes. I don't know what software, principle it works on. It could work, similarly to a spam filter, I imagine, but I guess it could work in other ways as well. That doesn't matter. The point is they're going to make some sort of filter that will detect stupid posts or stupid typing. So, for example...
I read somewhere that it was kind of like a Bayesian thing.
Yeah, that's similar to a spam filter. The way this would work, I guess, in theory, as I've heard it described, is let's say you try to post on a blog and you say something like, well, I think that's jolly good and you should blah, blah, blah. And it would say, congratulations.
You are
have posted."
British.
Yes. And then let's say you go to that blog again later and you say, man, that sucks, Ors. It would say, and you click post. It would say, sorry, your post is too stupid. Try writing something more intelligible.
It's kind of like, warning, cat-like typing detected.
Yeah. I imagine this also could be used for email. You could be like, it would like highlight the emails which are stupid. You could just not read those ones and then read the
more
other
and
ones.
more, because our forums are getting to the point where Mr. Period isn't around so often, and he doesn't get you guys as much as he should, and Water's Poison does what he can, but he can't get all of you, and I don't have time to look at the stupid forum. And
I'm too lazy.
So, once something like this is in a workable state, you can bet your collective asses that stupid typing will just be blocked outright on our forums.
Yep, pretty much. I'm going to use this on pretty much everywhere I can get. I imagine that it could have some sort of algorithm, like detect spelling mistakes, detect grammatical errors,
See,
and have some sort of percentage-wise.
Oh, definitely. Well, I could see what I would
and then
like
look
to
at
do.
like the amount of typing, and then look for like standalone U's and R's.
Or if you just train it. I mean, you say, this is a stupid post. Rate every post on a scale of 1 stupid to 5 stupids.
Yep.
And then
5 stupids being the most or the least stupid.
Either way.
Yeah. I think it would just work just fine being stupid or not stupid, as opposed to rating on a scale of stupids.
I mean, I could see it being very elegant in the end. These sorts of things tend to turn out that way, where it wouldn't... I mean, if someone makes a typo, that happens. Everyone makes mistakes. But if someone consistently ends sentences in poorly placed prepositions...
Yeah, it would definitely, have some sort of leniency. It wouldn't be like, oh, you made a spelling mistake, you're stupid. It would probably, be like, okay, your post is like 10% stupid.
It's kind of like how the Supreme Court decided what pornography was. I'll know it when I see it. I know a stupid post when I see a stupid post. I can pick them out. If I can get a computer to, within 80%, do the same thing for me, the internet's going to be a much better place to be.
I think this is great, and I think that I will mostly only go to websites that use this sort of thing. At least websites with user comments and forums and whatnot.
So, I'm not even going to try that sort of segue. New York State has had some issues with Facebook lately. I'm not going to get into all of them, but... one of the big issues is that they seem to, and this isn't just with Facebook or New York State, this is kind of a broad American problem where any sort of social networking or internet thing will be used by people of all ages, and there's no way to verify anyone's identity easily. As a result, a lot of people possibly say things they maybe shouldn't have said. A lot of people who say they're 18 are obviously 11. And occasionally, there are sexual predators and other problems. And more, it seems like parents and lawmakers are doing everything they can to punish the people who provide these contents and these services and prevent them from giving us good stuff, instead of just forcing parents and or schools to teach kids how to not give their social security number to strangers on the internet.
Or, parents watching the hell what your kids are doing.
I mean, remember, Butters, never get into a car with a stranger. Unless it's a limousine.
Yep.
And I guess the rationale there is that Facebook is parents don't get it. They look at Facebook or MySpace or any of these places, and to them it's a limousine. It's just a place that it's run by a corporation. It must be safe. And that's obviously not true. But I think this problem just comes out of the fact that the generational gap in terms of understanding of technology, by and large, is just widening. There are exceptions, but you can't pretend that isn't the general rule.
The question I have here, right, is that basically Facebook is doing something, right? And New York State has a problem with it. But where is Facebook? Like California, right?
I don't know.
So why should anything New York State matter to Facebook? Like, I guess they, they'd have to sue them under like a federal law because they're doing business across state borders, right? So I that's the thing that I'm struggling to understand is how one individual state has a problem with a national or an international company, and how what they say even matters. Shouldn't it require federal action to do anything?
Well, it wasn't really lawsuits or anything. It was just them. A lot of this was just tongue lashing and garbage, just saying, well, you should do this and you should do this. And they're trying to force them to do things.
You can do that all you want, but Facebook, I guess, shouldn't be obligated unless, right?
See, I'm not a lawyer. I don't
know either, but it's sort of weird to me that, like, you have these companies, like internet companies like Google and stuff. We know the problems like Google in China, and that's an issue of, international stuff, which makes sense. But where certain states have different laws, and these companies, that are, basically worldwide, are forced to change their ways because one state has a problem, and it changes the ways for everyone, because you can't change it for just one state. That's basically impossible.
The issue I'm more interested in is just the idea that people are always saying, oh, Facebook should do something about this. What, pray tell, do these people expect Facebook to do?
No, these people don't understand that, so they can't
that's
make any
the problem.
realistic expectations.
People in Congress and parents just don't understand the technology, so they make demands of the technology that are infeasible. I mean, what? Ban anyone under 18? How are you going to tell? Credit card doesn't count. I had a credit card when I was 16, and you can use your parents' credit card. You can generate credit card numbers.
You cannot expect someone to make a realistic expectation if they don't understand the thing that they're complaining about.
And I wonder when this idea, the very vague, broad idea behind this of parents and lawmakers making demands of technology that are infeasible at what point is that going to explode one way or the other? At what point are laws going to ruin the
Well,
internet? Or at what point are old people going to die of old age?
Well, I know that it's never going to become feasible, so...
I don't know. That stupidity filter will probably prevent the majority of 14-year-olds from posting on the internet for at least another 12 years.
That might help, yes.
So, things of the day. A while ago, I don't think we ever used it as a thing of the day, but there hasn't been nearly as much Team Fortress 2 Machinima as I've hoped for. Now,
Well, I think the problem with that is that, with something like Quake, right, there's very little done for you. It's pretty much you got the Quake guy and you got some bad guys, and that's it. And because there's so little done for you, but you still have to work within these huge constraints, that you get really creative machinima going on. Whereas with Team Fortress 2, it's sort of like all the work is done for you already. So what machinima can you really do? The game is machinima.
I think the other problem is just that, for me at least, the real appeal of machinima was that it wasn't easy to do and it wasn't done. And seeing it, like when I saw Father Frag's Best at a LAN party in Southfield, I'd never seen anything like that. That was amazing. Who would even think to do that? Now, it's kind of easy to make machinima, and I don't care about it a lot anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I care about machinima the same way I care about other short, funny videos, or perhaps long, funny.
Yeah, they have to be good in and
or
of
not
themselves.
even funny, but it's basically just someone made a movie in some length, and they distribute it in some way, and they happen to use a game engine to make the movie.
Yep, that's it.
That's all it is.
Like machinima,
it's
the
not
word
special anymore.
doesn't mean anything useful to me because it's a video on YouTube. Is it funny or not?
Yeah, it's like I don't really, prejudice between live action and animation, and machinima is just a different animation tool.
But we talked about briefly Ignis Solus, which the first half of it is actually, I think, an extremely well done work, and the second half goes nowhere.
Yep.
But this is probably the funniest Team Fortress 2 machinima to date, if you don't count the actual official animations from the Team Fortress 2 team.
Yeah, the machinima is made by Valve. But yeah, it's funny.
It's
mostly voice acting.
Yes, the voice acting is just dude, muscles coming out of his lips, and
It's mostly a work of voice acting that happens to use machinimas, but it's good.
yeah. Now it's on the start of that Pure Punnage show that I haven't really watched and I don't know much about. So that is not my thing of the day. My thing of the day is just the machinima at the beginning.
Oh, as long as at the beginning, you can just stop after the machinima's over.
Yeah, which is what I did.
All right. My thing of the day, I'm not sure how old this is, but I discovered it recently, and that's, well, screw everybody. It's cicadacom.com, and I'm not sure exactly what there is to know about it, but there's music on this website, and I assume there are people at this website who made this music. And the music is very video gamey. I mean, they've got like some Metroid tracks here, but basically they've got two albums. They got a bunch of albums on this site, and I haven't listened to nearly even most to all of them, but there are two. There is Technology Crisis and Technology Crisis 2. And these are basically full albums you can just download and listen to, but I think they are fully copyrighted, so we might have to ask to get permission to use them in another way. But you can download the MP3s for free, and it's an album of music that sounds like it should be music from a video game. Like, you're like, man, this is an awesome video game soundtrack. What game is it from? It's not from a game.
That's kind of like Pirate Baby, Cabana Battle, whatever, where, man, what video game is that? It's not a video game. It's just a movie that looks like one.
Sort of like that, yeah. But this website has a whole lot of music that's pretty awesome, geeky, rockin' music of varying quality. And if you're looking for something to listen to, here is a treasure trove that will provide you with many hours of listening pleasure for no money.
So, it came up in the forums recently, partly because
And also on the whole internet.
Partly because we talked about it, and I made an offhand comment that I will defend at the end of all this. But the idea of Dolby Pro Logic and the problems with Guitar Hero and all that business, and it made us realize that, one, that's something we could talk about, because while I have been writing a podcasting guide for some time, and I'll finish it someday and publish it somehow, Scott did something similar that isn't done, but he's worked a lot on it, about computer audio.
Right.
And consumer audio.
Basically, a lot of people seem to understand, parts of audio that are like, okay, the audio comes off the CD with the laser. And they understand near the speakers, like, okay, the electricity comes into the speaker and the magnet goes back and forth and it makes sound. But
you know how few people know there's a magnet there?
Okay, But okay.
You know, a few people even understand
Attention.
what a
This is
speaker
how a
is.
speaker works. An analog electric signal comes into the speaker. There is a magnet in the speaker. The electrical signal is a wave. It's analog. The
Theoretically-
magnet moves according to the wave. Sound comes out. You
Theoretically,
learned something today.
I could make a digital speaker with servo motors that vibrated cones.
This is how people turn all sorts of random electronic devices into speakers. They just send anything with a moving part. You just send an analog electrical signal into it that can power it at the right voltage, and it'll make it move according to the analog wave. And if things move in a wave, they make sound.
Well, the one interesting thing people should know is just that there's no difference between a microphone and a speaker.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you, and Rim will help, about surround sound.
Mostly I'll let Scott talk, but I'll jump in with all the relevant audio engineering bits.
Yes. The first thing you need to know before you know about surround sound is about mono sound. Mono sound is just mono. It's
track.
One track. So if you have one speaker, just one, that vibrates one magnet, and you take a mono track, you can hear the whole thing with one speaker. Right? That's all the noise comes out of one speaker. That's what mono is. Stereo sound. You have two speakers. It's 2.0, two speakers and no subwoofers. That's when people say 5.1, they mean 5 speakers and 1 subwoofer, right? 6.2 is 6 speakers and 2 subwoofers, which is stupid.
Now,
But
there were those, I believe they were called quadraphonic records a long time
I'm going to
ago.
talk about quadraphonic.
Yeah, that went nowhere, by the way.
My dad had one, but
So did my dad.
He had a quadraphonic receiver, but only 2 speakers. But anyway, stereo sound 2.0, you have 2 speakers, and you can actually send different audio to the left and different audio to the right. And it's basically, the way they do this is they have 2 monos. You just have twice as much sound, and it takes up twice as much data. And you don't lose any data because you have just 2 different mono tracks. You send one out one wire and one out a different wire. And you sort of, you create your music in such a way where you decide when you're making the music or audio which sounds are going to come out of the left and which are going to come out of the right. And it sounds really good. You can do cool stuff with it. Like, you'll be playing, you listen to some music and the guitar will be rocking on the left and the bass will be rocking on the right. And it sounds totally awesome. That's the stereo sound is.
Now, well, I guess because stereo sound is just the way it doesn't always have to sound stereo. It's just that is when you have 2 streams of audio going to 2 speakers. Now, you can, with trickery, use those 2 speakers to make surround sound that sounds totally real to people.
Yep.
And the math of that is complicated, but basically all you have to do is the reason we hear in stereo and the way that works is one,
we have 2 ears.
Not only do we have 2 ears, but our ears are not both identical. Usually someone's right or left ear is a little bit higher or lower, shape's a little bit different.
Everyone's ear is crazy different. You got bones in the ear that make a difference. You got the shape of your ear that makes a difference, the position of your head.
And if you notice how a lot of animals, or humans too, if they hear a sound or they wonder, instinctually, you'll kind of cock your head a little bit, and you'll move your head around a little bit. And there's all these ways that animals can define where sound is coming from and hear in stereo. But the way we actually tell, basically, essentially boils down.
The brain figures it out.
To the difference, the delay between when one ear hears it and when the other ear hears it. And because our ears are shaped, we have other mechanisms to determine if something is in front of us or behind us. Because theoretically, if our ears were identical, we would not be able to tell between a sound that was exactly in front of us and exactly behind us. But we can tell, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But the shape of the head and everything have an effect. But basically, if you mess with sound, like I say, all right, I'll take this frequency range and I'll phase shift it or something, or I'll delay it out of the left speaker but not the right speaker a tiny fraction of a second. But then this frequency range, I'll delay even more, and this frequency range, I'll delay even less. Each one of those bands will sound physically like it's in a different part of the room because your brain says, well, I calculated this delay, therefore the object is right there. And a lot of computer games have used this to great effect.
Back in the day, before the current, right now, if you want to play a game in surround sound, a lot of them just use DTS or whatever. But some of them use creative EAX kind of sound blaster stuff. But back in the day, there was AC3. No, it wasn't AC3. It was Altec. No, what the hell? A-Track. No, what the fuck was it called?
Forget it.
It began with an A.
Because all that Sound Blaster stuff, you pretty much...
All those words I said were things that have other things to do with audio.
Yeah, that was just reverb, the creative thing. They acted like it was fancy and this is like it's just reverb.
Yep. But yeah, there was another competitor that began with an A that got killed by
A3D.
creative. Yes, A3D, goddamn. And that was basically what Rim is talking about, using stereo sound to sound like surround sound.
Yeah, well, specifically, I'm talking about doing it myself because I've done it all. I do it. It's fun. I used to take music that I had and do that to it, and I'd bring I could bring the trumpet part so it sounded like the trumpet part was next to me and everything else was far away, and all this fun stuff.
So yeah. So in stereo sound is pretty good, and that's why most things you listen to today are in stereo sound. FM is, FM radio is stereo, AM radio is mono.
Well, it helps that we have two ears. I mean, binaural recording, you can record things perfectly.
Yep. You can, this is why headphones, you have two speakers in them. Stereo is great. That's all there is to say. So then some guy came up with quadraphonic. I'm not going to talk about this much, but quadraphonic was, it came and it went with good reason.
It was more. It was 4 speakers.
Well, it was basically 4 speakers with 4 full audio tracks, and you had to get special records because this is that old, right? And you had a special receiver, and you had to have 4 speakers, and it was ludicrous. And, it was something that rich, fancy people bought, and there weren't too many quadraphonic records, and that was it.
This was
then it went away.
Early audiophiles.
If anything tells you, my dad had a receiver capable of quadraphonic, but he only had 2 speakers, and he had stereo records on his stereo turntable. So later on, eventually people decided, hey, surround sound. We can do cool stuff. Like, what if we had a whole bunch of speakers in the movie theater? We could make it sound like stuff is coming all over the place. And in the movie theater, it is pretty awesome. You can get wicked Star Wars action going on. And things in the, what's it called? The OmniMax or theaters and stuff. You can
IMAX?
IMAX. Well, OmniMax is better than IMAX, but it's all the same. You can get really cool special effects if you have lots of speakers, lots of powerful speakers, and you determine in production time which audio comes out of which speakers. And that's pretty cool stuff. And people eventually said, hey, I can afford to get a lot of speakers. Speakers are cheap. Why can't I have that awesome cinematic experience in my house? Well, you can. You can get surround sound in your house.
The problem is, it's not quite that simple. I mean, how many old movies are recorded in surround sound?
Almost
Casablanca doesn't have 5.1 audio tracks.
Here's another thing, right? Okay, you want in surround sound, right? 5.1 audio tracks with no loss of data. Well, you know how big a wave file is of, like, say, a 3-minute song, right? Even a FLAC. Okay, so you compress losslessly a 5-minute song, right? That is stereo sound. That's a lot of data. That can be like 40 megs. This podcast, right? Compressed an hour in MP3, heavily compressed, can be like 40 megs. Take a 90-minute movie, now take 6 tracks of audio, so 3 times stereo, and make it lossless. That would take
have room for the movie.
And still have room for the movie on a 4-gigabyte DVD. It's not happening.
Plus, the movie's going to be HD, and then what?
Okay, so you put it on a gigantic Blu-ray. So you fit the HD movie on the gigantic Blu-ray. Guess what? There's no room for the 6 channels of lossless audio. Also, 6 channels of lossless audio. Okay, how are you going to transfer those from your DVD player to your receiver to your speakers? You don't have that. You're going to have 6 wires coming out of your freaking stereo
or
DVD player.
One digital wire, but then you have to have a fairly good bus to send that data.
Even if you have a digital wire. Okay, so you have one digital wire. You know how ludicrously fast it has to be able to transfer enough data in, so that the audio comes out without being delayed?
Now, computers could do it, but are you going to spend a computer's worth on just the audio part of your DVD player?
No, that's not going to happen. So, they've invented many technologies to do surround sound, and I will explain them all briefly, or at least the ones you care about briefly. The first one was Dolby Surround. Dolby Surround is what they used in the movie theaters back in the day. And basically what they did is they took stereo sound, analog stereo sound, and on each one of the 2 channels, they phase shifted another channel. Now this, if you played this out of normal speakers, it wouldn't sound quite right because you have this, audio on top of audio. But the receiver, the equipment that received the signal, would take the audio and basically split up because, you have 2 waves. One is phase shifted. So when something's in phase, that's when the humps of the waves meet the humps of the waves and the dips in the waves meet the dips. So if you phase shift it, you have these humps meeting the not, sort of off. And when if you have a phase shifted wave on top of another phase shifted wave with math, you can split them up again. So if you have stereo sound, 4 waves, 2 phase shifted on top of each other to create a new wave, then you split it up on the other end. Now you can have 4 speakers worth. So they did left, right, center, and rear. And that was the original Dolby, just normal Dolby surround. Then they came out with Dolby Pro Logic. Dolby Pro Logic was basically Dolby surround, but better. In addition, they had another feature, and this feature allowed you to take stereo sound, so if you had a CD, right, back in the day with just Dolby surround, you couldn't listen to a CD in surround sound. You put a stereo CD in there. It was like the quadraphonic record days. If you had a stereo record, it would only play out of 2 speakers.
Now, you could probably make it play out of 4, but it would just play the same thing out of 2 and the same thing out of the other 2.
Yeah, you could duplicate. Say, okay, whatever you're playing on the front right, play on the back right. That doesn't really help you, though. It's just stereo sound with more speakers and more loudness. It doesn't actually surround sound. You won't hear the X-Wing flying around behind you, but not in front of you, You won't hear the laser going over your left shoulder towards your front right. So Dolby Pro Logic, what they did is using some math that I'm not going to explain. They had a system where you could take a stereo CD or a stereo audio signal, and it would figure out a way to split that up, not split it up so much, but do math and calculate it would generate a brand new, not brand new, but from the stereo sound it had, it would figure out what should go on the center channel and what should go on the rear channel. So even if you didn't have a surround sound DVD or a Laserdisc, because that was in the Dolby Pro Logic 1 days, it was Laserdisc, you could still hear your CDs in surround-ish sound on all your speakers, and it wouldn't just be copying. Then came Dolby Pro Logic 2, which is mostly what we're using these days. What Dolby Pro Logic 2 does is not really, it takes the same old Dolby Pro Logic and improves upon it. And it also allows you to take mono audio, right? And if you put it in matrix mode, it can actually upmix the mono to be stereo, right? To surround sound. And it also takes stereo sound, and can upgrade it to 5.1 instead of 4.0. So now your normal old CD that you bought at the store with Dolby Pro Logic 2, you can listen to that in 5.1 surround sound. And it's not like the people making the CD decided in advance what audio would come out of which speakers or anything. The receiver that you're using just sort of figures it out. And you can put it in different modes. You can put it in matrix mode, movie mode, music mode, game mode. And depending on which mode you pick, it changes the way it figures out what comes out of the other speakers. And it sounds different. And that's why when you push those buttons on your stereo, it says hall, movie, whatever. And that's what it's doing. Dolby Pro Logic 2X is the same as Dolby Pro Logic 2, only they added support for 6.1 and 7.1. So if you're one of those crazies with 7 speakers and a subwoofer, your stereo CD you can hear on all your speakers.
I'll be honest, I like surround sound, but it's never really been worth it to bother with the mess and the wires, and wireless sucks.
But Dolby Pro Logic specifically is a way for you to take things that aren't in surround sound and listen to them on your surround sound system, and they will sound better, and they will be on all your speakers in a good way that sounds good if things are set up right.
Now, why did because I made a throwaway comment about this sort of thing in a previous show, and basically the reason I said that was simply that the majority of people who have surround sound systems and use this sort of thing have no idea how it works. Now, not in terms of math or in terms of the signals or whatever. I don't care if you know that. You don't need to know that. You don't need to know how internal combustion works to drive a car. But you need to know what all those buttons on the dashboard do.
Yep.
And a lot of people, and I've been to their houses, they'll have a surround sound system, and it's not in surround sound, and it never has been. They don't have it set up right at all. And they always like, oh, I got the surround sound, it's great, but it's not surround sound, and they can't even tell. They don't know.
They don't know.
And especially with the Pro Logic, it always acts like, yeah, it's working. Yeah, it's in surround. And it might kind of be, but not really. And not so great.
Nope. So right now, people complaining about Guitar Hero 3 on the Wii, and they're like, oh, my Pro Logic doesn't work. Well, no, actually, you're a fool. And in fact, it could be possible that the Pro Logic would not be working properly, and they still wouldn't even know, because if it wasn't working properly, stereo sound would come out, their receivers would Pro Logic it to surround sound, and they wouldn't know anything was wrong, even though something very well could be wrong, because they have no clue how it works. However, on the GameCube or the Wii or something, if you can say some of the games are in Dolby Pro Logic 2 or whatever, which means they specially constructed and did the phase shifting, whatever, to decide in advance what would come out of what speakers. But still, it's just a stereo audio signal, and it also tells your receiver ever to go into game mode, which is so it sounds the way they want it to sound in games. But the problem in Guitar Hero, the reason people are noticing a problem is because the game is broken and it has mono audio. And mono audio can only be upgraded to surround sound with Pro Logic if you're using Pro Logic 2 in Matrix mode. So because of that, people are looking at the receivers and they're seeing that the little Pro Logic light isn't turning on, and they're realizing that sound isn't coming out of any of the speakers except like one in the middle or just like the front ones. And now they realize there's a problem, even though they have no clue what the problem is or why or anything. So
The game is, however, broken.
the game is, yes, I do think mono sound is I have to say not acceptable, and they really should sort of put the game out again with stereo sound with some sort of recall. And again, I've been playing the game with mono sound, on our stereo TV with no surround sound. We don't have any surrounds. We just use TV speakers. I haven't noticed any problem. It sounds great to me. I didn't even notice.
Well, I did notice in one, but this has nothing to do with that. The practice mode in Guitar Hero 3 is garbage because when you play it at any slow speed, almost every song just sounds like horrible noise.
That is true.
Unlistenable noise.
Yeah, I think stereo might help that.
Yeah, but probably not. I'm not that confident.
All right.
But two, there's a bunch of songs where if you activate star power at certain times, it sounds really bad.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Really bad.
So, the only other thing I have to teach you about here is all those other surround sounds. The DTS, the Dolby Digital, these are all digital surround sound, right? This is something completely different from what Pro Logic is. Pro Logic takes an analog stereo signal and makes it into, figures out and sends audio to your speakers depending on what came in. This digital, someone in advance decided exactly what audio would go to which speakers, and it's digital, like an MP3 or a WAV file. It's zeros and ones, right? And the zeros and ones get sent to your receiver, and your receiver looks at those zeros and ones and then figures out what analog audio signals to send to which speakers based on the zeros and ones. Now, the first thing you need to know is about PCM. All you need to know about PCM is this. A WAV file is PCM. You take an analog audio signal in stereo, you turn it into zeros and ones. That's called PCM. Surround sound, DTS and Dolby Digital, all those things, use something that's not PCM. Well, it is PCM, but it's not. It's called AC3. What AC3 is you take, say, 5.1 channels of audio, and you compress them. It's lossy. You're losing audio. It's not full. It's not like if you had 3 stereo waves separately for 6 channels. It's less than that. You're losing something. Like when you make an MP3 and you lose audio, you're losing something when you do this.
Granted, the point of MP3 is that you lose audio that nominally humans can't hear.
Right, but AC3 is you're losing something. So it's not full 6 channels. But you'll notice a lot of audio files, they're listening to like, DTS, it's so much better. Not really, no. It's just more speakers. DTS and all these things, what they do is they take 6 channels of audio, and using AC3, they are able to make a PCM wave that actually, and using some crazy thing that I'm not going to explain, contains a lot more audio, but, they had to compress it, which is how it fits. They send that AC3, which is also PCM kind of, over to the receiver, and the receiver says, oh, DTS, eh? I see this is DTS AC3. What audio do you want me to send to which speaker? And in advance, it was decided which audio would go to which speaker. So your receiver splits up, decodes that AC3, which is all zeros and ones, and figures out what audio to send to which speaker. And that's how it works. That's all there is to digital surround sound. And digital surround sound is pretty damn good, and I think it has a lot of uses. For example, if you want to hear those X-Wings flying around behind you, DTS or Dolby Digital is the way that's going to happen. If you want to play Half-Life 2 and bad guys shooting behind you, this is also how that's going to happen. That's how it works. The thing is, you need to have first of all, the sound that you're listening to has to be encoded this way. The hardware that is sending it to your receiver has to be sending it in a digital form with like an optical audio cable of some sorts. Or, and the receiver has to support that particular format, and then you have to have enough speakers to connect and have all those outputs go out. And most people have no clue how to set that up or how it works or anything. And that's how surround sound works. That's really all there is to it. Anything more would be like the math of how they split these things up and how the waves fit and how they do the compression.
Which you really don't care about.
You really don't care. Most movie theaters, as far as I know, they just go full on and they just have, a track of audio fully and lossless for every single, channel that they want.
Do they?
I think they do.
I'm just curious.
That's my guess. Why wouldn't they? They get these movies with these digital projectors. Why wouldn't they just send one more disc with the audio on it?
I don't know, but are you sure?
If they don't do that, they probably just use like the most DTS you can use, which would probably be like I guess 6.2 channels, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're done for tonight, though. We stayed late in the city, so, I want to go to bed.
Yeah, but in general, I think the opinion is, despite how surround sound works, in my opinion, unless you're really listening to one of those movies that need surround sound, like The Matrix or Star Wars or something, or unless you're playing a video game like, Counter-Strike, where hearing the bad guys behind you, or it's a really cinematic game like a Resident Evil maybe, surround sound is largely useless and sort of a vanity thing that a lot of people buy to show off. Like, ooh, look, I have surround sound, when really it's not that great. I mean, I have surround sound on my PC for, games so I can hear people behind me. But in the living room, we just use the TV speakers.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geek Nights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.